Henry Kissinger is a titan of American politics.
We will not be blackmailed.
Having served as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor during the Nixon and Ford administrations. He pioneered the détente period of easing tensions with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and in 1972 coordinated a breakthrough summit in China, paving the way for formal diplomatic relations between the two countries. Dr. Kissinger spoke to the Economist Asks podcast about the current standoff between America and China and what the Biden administration needs to do to avert rising tension.
Henry Kissinger, welcome to The Economist Asks.
Pleasure to be here.
You've said recently that the world is heading back to a time of great conflicts, potential superpower conflicts. Tensions between the US and China have brought that into the foreground. Do you think that that threat has got markedly greater of late?
The dialogue between China and the United States has taken on increasingly confrontational character. And the issues, one side alleges, we allege, that the Chinese are aiming for global hegemony. The Chinese believe that we are intervening in their domestic affairs. With issues defined like this, every additional issue that might emerge makes it more and more difficult to come to an understanding, which I believe, in the light of the capacities of the two countries and the technological evolution, I believe that some agreement on principle between the two sides is essential. And it will have to happen, and it will happen sooner or later.
When you say in principle, I'm interested, what might that look like? What would an agreement, a new pact between America and China look like?
I think the minimum understanding that is required is that the two sides exclude a high-tech war between each other. And secondly, that they exercise restraint in their relations with each other, but also in relations with the rest of the world. And on that basis, then one can take up individual issues as they arise.
And when you imagine these steps that you feel need to be taken on both sides, how do you assess the pivot of President Biden's foreign policy after a relatively short time in the White House? What do you think of the thrust of his approach?
President Biden has assembled a very competent team, and they are in the preliminary phase of coming to internal conclusions and in a sort of a feeling out process with the Chinese as to what a dialogue between China and the United States might look like. I think it is an improved tone over his predecessor, and fundamentally a confrontation which challenges the basic structure of either side must be avoided. I start from that principle. And we are heading into a dialogue, I believe, that will allow this to happen.
You believe, if I understand you correctly, that President Biden is interested in opening dialogue with China, and yet his public pronouncements on trade, on human rights, on the relationship in general have been pretty tough. Is there a continuity, perhaps, with Donald Trump on that score, or do you see this as a new era?
Biden is attempting to balance his domestic pressures against his international necessities. Within the United States right now, China as a threat has become a rather commonplace view. And it's probably the case that the opposition party, that the Republicans, are probably waiting for some opportunity to demonstrate that Biden is soft on Chinese communists. So he is seemingly attempting to navigate between these conflicting requirements to achieve some definition of the international order on which we in China agree, and the necessity of maintaining a domestic cohesion behind foreign policy. That seems to me the basic issue.
It's 50 years ago, I think, since you were engaging with China, when you famously went to China and broke that long standoff with Beijing. You have strongly advocated working with China ever since. I'm going to say that some of the evidence doesn't seem entirely to be running towards vindicating your hopes of that time. A few examples would be China's actions, including record numbers of Chinese jets in Taiwanese airspace, the bearing down on Hong Kong and extinguishing of freedoms, legal and political there, human rights abuses in Xinjiang, the rules-based order that maintains global stability does not seem to be applying very clearly to China at the moment. Doesn't this merit a harder line?
I have never advanced the view that coexistence with China will lead to a democratization of China. I look at China as a long historical evolution, operating partly by Confucian as well as by Marxist principles, which include an invocation for their country, for the highest standard of performance. The question is whether a country performing at that level and the United States can coexist creatively. Because for the United States, we have never in our history encountered a country of that magnitude. It's likely to have that magnitude for an indefinite period of time. And is it possible to have coexistence between a democratic country and a combination Confucian Marxist country? I believe it's necessary. I also believe it's attainable, but I don't believe it's automatic. So we have to define the issues.
Henry Kissinger, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
You can listen to the full interview in our podcast, The Economist Asks. Every week, we talk to a high-profile figure. Click the link opposite to find this episode, and thanks for watching.